Hello everyone, I'm Devon Coombs, and today I'm going to be going over additional information for my book, Scholarships Quick and Easy. If you purchased my book, thank you very much, and if you haven't, you can find a link to the book in the comment section below. So let's get started. Today we're going to be continuing our section on applying for scholarships, but this section is especially important. It's letters of recommendation. You can't get scholarships generally without letters of recommendation, and a lot of students I know, this is a huge area of trouble for them because they do not know who to reach out to, or they don't reach out to the people on time, and if without your letters of recommendation, you can't apply for your scholarship. So I'm going to tell you exactly how to get these letters of recommendation, along with the etiquette regarding it. So, professors, most obvious choice for letters of recommendations for scholarships. We're also going to be talking about employers and personal references, and friends and family. So let's get started. Letters of recommendation, professors. This is the most authoritative type of recommendation for scholarships. If you're applying to an academic scholarship, they want to see that you have a relationship with a professor, that you did well in a class, and a professor actually likes you enough to take the time to write a letter of recommendation. Most professors will do so if you have an A or B in the class. But let's continue. You want to always give your professors 2 to 4 weeks notice. Do not tell a professor, hey, I need a letter of recommendation in 3 days. These are really busy people. They normally have families. If they don't have families, they have to worry about grading and preparing for their classes. You don't want to be rude. You want to give them time. I like to give 4 weeks notice, but I think 2 weeks is fine as well. The more time, the better. And if you give a lot of time, then it's more okay to follow up. Like if I give a 4 weeks notice to a professor, then after 2 weeks, I'll remind them. And then if 1 week passes, I'll remind them again. And then I'll start reminding them on a daily basis if it's coming close to a deadline. So when I say 2 to 4 weeks notice, that's 2 to 4 weeks notice of when you want your letter of recommendation. I normally do that before the deadline, so I'm normally getting my letters of recommendation much before my deadline, like a month or 2 weeks before my deadline. So I'm talking about asking professors almost 2 months before you actually need your letter of recommendation. I'm telling you, you want that. You don't. I have a friend who could have won a very nice award and wasn't able to get it because his professor forgot to write him the letter of recommendation. It's terrible. Friends and family, I want to talk about them especially later, but you do not want your friends and family to write letters of recommendation. I know so many people who get, I have it asked all the time. I have friends ask me, can you write me a letter of recommendation? I am not a professor. I am not your employer. You shouldn't be asking me for a letter of recommendation. So the professors are much better than friends and family, but we're going to go into that detail later. So provide professors with a short autobiography. So I always, when I'm asking for a letter of recommendation, give a professor my resume, and I have a video on resume, so you can watch that later if you need help with that, and a short autobiography or my personal statement so they know a little bit more about me. Even if I have a close relationship with a professor, they still might not know where I'm going to be working or my past experience, so give them some fuel to write a letter of recommendation. Also provide a resume or a transcript. So I already brought up the resume, but a transcript really helps them too, so they can see how you did in other classes, not just theirs. And then don't ask professors you didn't do well. And I know people who thought they had a friend professor, but they got a C in the class. Don't ask that professor. They can't write about your stellar academic performance. You want to write to professors and get your professor's letters of recommendation from professors that you had a good relationship with and you earned A or B grades from. I would ask at least 5 professors. When I asked 5 professors, I got 2 to 3 letters of recommendation. Also, if you can, and if it fits the scholarships guidelines, ask the letters of recommendation to be generic. So I'd have my professor, every professor that I'd write to, I'd ask them specifically, can you please make a generic letter of recommendation that I can keep on file? Something that says, I recommend Devon Coombs for every and all scholarships that he applies for, any or all awards. This lets you not bug your professors if you're applying to multiple scholarships. You could just use that same scholarship essay for everything. That same letter of recommendation for everything, not scholarship essay. So then if you do, I promise you some people will give you generic essays, PDF versions, signed, and digital copies of them. So keep those digital copies and use them for the future. I still have letters of recommendation from 5 years ago that I am willing to use. This is a great resource, and it's going to save you time. So many people keep asking for new letters of recommendation, and you're just wasting your time. And you're also bugging your professors, so don't do that. Also, make sure you thank your professors for their efforts and let them know when you are applying for a new scholarship and using that letter of recommendation. So I had one professor, an accounting professor, I used his letter of recommendation 5 different times over 2 years, and every time I used it, I thanked him again and told him that he might be contacted regarding the letter of recommendation. You need to do the same thing. And then also inform them when you win the scholarship and thank them, a 3rd time. They spend a lot of time writing these letters, so you want to thank them and let them know, and that helps develop the relationship. They get excited too. So let's talk about the second most authoritative type of recommendation, employers and personal references. So take everything I said with professors, and let's think of a few additional concerns and comments. If you cannot get professor recommendations, or if the scholarship requires something other than a professor recommendation, which most don't, then you get these. Then you get your employer or personal reference recommendations, or you can get them from volunteer organizations as well. They're still very authoritative, but they're not as academic. So I still only get these if it's required, or if you have a professor, if it's required, or if you can't get the professor recommendation. Volunteer organizations are also a great source for recommendation letters. It's just, I know sometimes scholarship committees worry that they're just having friends or families that run a volunteer organization write you the letter of recommendation. That's why professors are so much more authoritative. So let's talk about family and friends. You don't want these letters. This is a very last resort. It's not seen as professional. Anyone who has a letter of recommendation from a professor or from an employer will have a much better chance of getting the scholarship than you. There's very little authority. I mean, I love my family. Of course I'm going to write them a letter of recommendation, but it doesn't tell you much. I really stress that if you can't get the professor recommendation letters, your employer recommendation letters, or volunteer organization recommendation letter, then develop those relationships. Maybe you're not at a stage yet where you are ready to apply for the scholarships. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you need to develop relationships, because I don't want you to waste your time applying for scholarships that you might not get. You need to develop relationships with your community. You need to spend time with your professors, go to office hours, spend time with your employers, or if you're always working, get to know your boss and ask them for a letter of recommendation, or work in your church or temple or wherever you spend your time. Try to get that kind of letter of recommendation. You do not want friends and family to write you a letter of recommendation. It's just not authoritative whatsoever. So let's summarize. We talked about professors, employers, and personal references, and friends and family. Again, professors are the best. You want to make friends with your professors. You want them to give you letters of recommendation. Employers, the next best. Volunteer organizations, after that. And then personal references, friends and family. Try to avoid unless there's no other option. But I still stress you need to develop those relationships with professors and employers and volunteer organizations. That's going to help you in life in general, not just with scholarships. But professor letter recommendation, employer, and volunteer organizations are the ones that are going to get you the money. Thank you very much for your time. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. If you haven't bought my book already, please buy it. You can find a link to Scholarships Quick and Easy below. I'm selling it on Amazon, and it's available for Kindle, and there should be a print version available too. Please subscribe to my channel. Write me with any questions or comments or concerns. I'm always happy to respond. I want to have a dialogue with you. I want to make this information better. I want you to succeed and make a bunch of money through scholarships and have an easier life and not have college debt and not get funneled into this crazy economy that's dragged down by student debt. I want to be able to help you. So just write me, businesscoretutoring@gmail.com. Thank you so much for your time, and have a wonderful day. Bye.